the whole ideology of the place was that because they were arrested, they were guilty. They must be, because the party was never wrong. It never makes mistakes. The word for prisoner in Cambodia means guilty person rather than someone who's being held. And even if some of the people you kill turn out not to have been guilty of the crimes you've charged them with, so what? You might find that out later. But at the time, it's probably better to get rid of them than to keep them around in case they are guilty.
Pol Pot said that he had never heard of Tuol Sleng S-21, the torture chamber of which almost 20,000 people he ordered went through to their deaths after extensive torture.
Although the Khmer Rouge tried to destroy the evidence, every torture process and every confession of every prisoner was recorded in detail.
The documentation was very important to these people, but I think they were intended partly to convince Pol Pot and his colleagues who saw the documents themselves, saw copies of them, that they were on the right track. They knew there'd be no punishment for killing all these people. There'd be punishment for people who were tortured to death, and this did happen in many cases. The interrogators themselves were often pulled in and interrogated because they were betraying the revolution by going too far, by torturing people to death before the confession was complete, before the party had been proved right.
Of the thousands who entered S-21, just 7 survived, and only 1 was ever released. The rest were either tortured to death or killed and then buried at S-21's customized killing field, Cheung Ek.
This was a systematic regime doing some systematic, cruel things to its own people for reasons that were demented but made sense to them.
Appearing to be at the height of his power, Pol Pot's government was in fact imploding. His psychotic and lifelong hatred for the Vietnamese would be his undoing.
Pol Pot really believed that Cambodia would disappear off the map unless he was able to dispense with the Vietnamese threat. They thought it required a genocidal way of thinking against Vietnamese generally. Also, there's this much more primordial racist feeling that Vietnamese by nature could not exist and coexist with Cambodians, that there had to be an Armageddon. Every Cambodian should kill 30 Vietnamese. They could lose 2 million Cambodians. The Vietnamese would lose 60 million in this Armageddon, and we would still have 6 million left.
In response to continuous raids into Vietnamese territory, on the 21st of December 1977, 150,000 Vietnamese troops stormed across the Cambodian border. By January the 6th, 1978, they were on the outskirts of Phnom Penh.
With Cambodia, you have a span of 4 years of daily persecutions, humiliations, starvations, pain. So your soul as a human being gets desecrated more and more and more. So by the end of the 4 years, your hate, your anger, your hunger makes you a little less of a human being.
Pol Pot and thousands of his Khmer Rouge henchmen fled Phnom Penh to northern Cambodia and Thailand. From here, Pol Pot continued a guerrilla war against the new Vietnamese government. It would be another 20 years before he was seen again, but this time he was on trial.
The Khmer Rouge were people who no longer had faith in Pol Pot's leadership. They had arrested him, but they had arrested him not for crimes of genocide or crimes against humanity. They'd arrested him for essentially being a political enemy.
4 months later, Nate Thayer was invited to interview Pol Pot, who was now under house arrest and close to death.
When I first spoke with Pol Pot, he came up to me and he put his arm on my shoulder and he said, in this raspy voice, he said, "Knyom squalchimo yuhai," which means, "I've known your name for a long, long time." And that was the first thing he said to me, and he gave me this gentle, shy smile and kind of looked at me and gazed down and then took me by the arm and walked me to a little bamboo hut where he begged me to understand why it was necessary for him to execute little babies for hours in a very rational way. And of course, we started off knowing that it might be very short, asking him the fundamental questions of, you are accused of causing the deaths of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent Cambodians, and are you regretful? Are you sorry? And will you apologize? Which was a direct question repeatedly. And he refused to answer the question. And I did get angry, and he threatened to end the interview 3 times within half an hour, because that was not an acceptable answer to me as a journalist or as a human being. Cambodians deserve better, and they deserved, and the world deserves better than 2 journalists interviewing a genocidal maniac in the jungle in a bamboo hut.
2 weeks later, in April 1998, Pol Pot died of natural causes. The madness unleashed on Cambodia by Pol Pot and his colleagues will never be forgotten, but so far it has gone unpunished.